The crystal chandelier above the master suite swayed slightly, disturbed by the frantic movements of 15 specialists crowding around a hospital bed. This wasn't a hospital, though. This was the Ferreira estate. 20,000 square feet of imported marble, priceless art, and secrets buried deep enough to never see daylight. 8-year-old Catalina Ferreira was dying. Her small body convulsed violently against silk sheets, back arching unnaturally as foam gathered at the corners of her mouth. Monitors beeped in chaotic rhythms, their urgent sounds mixing with the voices of surgeons flown in from Switzerland, Germany, and Johns Hopkins. "Epinephrine now!" Dr. Howard barked, his hands shaking slightly as he prepared another injection. He'd performed surgery on diplomats and saved prime ministers, but this child, this one fragile girl, was slipping through his fingers like water. Victor Ferreira stood at the foot of the bed, a mountain of a man in a custom suit worth more than most cars. His knuckles were white around the bedpost, the wood creaking under his grip. At 45, Victor had built an empire through blood and fear, controlling half the city's businesses and most of its politicians. "What's happening?" His voice was dangerously quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. "You said the procedure would work this time." Dr. Howard didn't look up, too focused on checking Catalina's vitals. "The seizures aren't responding to medication. Her body is rejecting everything we try. Then find something else." Victor's roar shook the room. A nurse flinched. 2 specialists exchanged worried glances. They'd lost count of the treatments they'd tried over the past 5 weeks. Experimental drugs, cutting-edge procedures, ancient remedies from across the globe. Mr. Ferreira, Dr. Howard finally met his eyes, and Victor saw something there that made his blood turn to ice. "We've exhausted every option. Her organs are starting to fail. I don't think she'll make it through the night." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Victor's hand moved to his waistband where his pistol rested. "Let me make something crystal clear. If my daughter dies, you die. Every single one of you in this room dies. You understand? It wasn't a threat. It was a promise." Dr. Howard's face went pale, but before he could respond, Catalina's monitor began shrieking. The girl's eyes rolled back, her body going rigid. "She's crashing! Get the defibrillator!" The room exploded into chaos. Doctors shouted orders, nurses scrambled, medical equipment clattered. Through it all, Victor stood frozen, watching his only child die before him. He'd destroyed families and built his empire on intimidation, but he couldn't save his daughter. A knock on the door went unnoticed at first, then another more insistent. "Not now!" someone shouted. The door cracked open anyway, and Teresa, the head housekeeper, poked her head in nervously. "Mr. Ferreira, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but—" "Get out!" Victor's voice was a thunderclap. Teresa flinched but didn't leave. "Sir, the new maid is here. She's cleaning the hallway and heard the commotion. She says she might be able to help." Before Victor could respond, a woman's voice drifted up from the hallway. "Is everything okay?" I heard screaming. Then came the sound that changed everything. Catalina screamed. A raw, agonized sound that didn't belong to a child. And Maria Diaz, standing in the hallway with cleaning supplies, felt that scream pierce straight through her chest. She didn't think, didn't hesitate. Maria had spent 34 years learning to mind her own business, working as a hotel maid before taking this job to support her son through college. But that scream, that desperate, dying sound, it shattered something inside her. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "When someone is suffering, Maria, you help. That's what decent people do." Maria dropped her cleaning caddy. She pushed past Teresa, ignoring the shocked gasp. She burst through the bedroom door, and the scene before her froze her blood. The enormous room, the desperate doctors, machines screaming warnings, and in the center, a small girl dying on white sheets. "Who the hell?" someone started, but Maria was already moving, her worn sneakers squeaking on marble as she rushed to the bedside. A doctor tried to block her, but she ducked under his arm with the agility of someone who'd dodged trouble her entire life. "Get her out of here!" Dr. Howard shouted. Maria didn't listen. She reached Catalina's side and placed her hands on the girl's chest, feeling the violent spasms racking her tiny body. Her skin was burning. Her lips were turning blue. Her eyes stared at nothing. She'd seen this before. Not in a hospital, not in any medical textbook, but 15 years ago in her grandmother's tiny kitchen in rural Honduras, when her cousin had nearly died from what the village called the shaking sickness. "Ma'am, you need to leave immediately." A security guard grabbed her shoulder. Maria spun around and locked eyes with Victor Ferreira. The crime boss stared at this stranger, this nobody in a maid's uniform who just charged into his daughter's room like she belonged there. "Touch me again, and your boss will make you regret it," Maria said quietly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "That girl doesn't have time for your protocols." Victor raised his hand, stopping the guard. Something in this woman's eyes, a fierce, desperate determination, made him hesitate. "You have 60 seconds, Victor said. "Then I put a bullet in your head." Maria turned back to Catalina. 60 seconds to save a dying child. 60 seconds to change everything. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. Maria's hands moved with a certainty that surprised even herself. She'd watched her grandmother perform this exact ritual when Maria was 10 years old. Her cousin Diego convulsing just like Catalina, his body shutting down with no ambulance for miles. "I need hot water, clean towels, and herbs. Do you have rosemary, thyme, and cinnamon?" Maria's voice cut through the chaos with unexpected authority. Nobody moved. "Now!" she barked, and Teresa disappeared, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. Dr. Howard stepped forward, his face red with indignation. "Mr. Ferreira, this is absurd. This woman has no medical training. She's going to kill your daughter." Victor's gun cleared its holster in one fluid motion, the barrel now pointed at the doctor's forehead. "My daughter is already dying. You said so yourself. So either she kills her or you did. At least she's trying something new." The doctor's mouth opened and closed like a fish. 30 seconds left, Victor said to Maria, his eyes never leaving the doctor. Maria pressed her fingers against Catalina's neck, finding the pulse points her grandmother had taught her. The girl's heart was racing erratically, like an engine about to explode. She applied pressure, gentle but firm, on specific spots along her throat and collarbone. "What are you doing?" a nurse whispered. "Her nervous system is in overdrive," Maria explained, her fingers moving to new pressure points along Catalina's arms. "Everything's firing at once. I'm trying to reset it like rebooting a computer." Teresa burst back into the room, arms loaded with supplies. Maria grabbed a towel and plunged it into the steaming water, then wrung it out. She scattered herbs across the hot cloth, crushing them between her fingers to release their essential oils. Rosemary for circulation, cinnamon for the heart, thyme for the respiratory system, Maria murmured, as the sharp medicinal scent filled the room. "This is medieval nonsense, Doctor," Howard protested, but his voice had weakened considerably. Maria folded the herb-infused cloth and pressed it against Catalina's chest directly over her heart. Then she began rubbing slow, rhythmic circles that matched the pattern of a healthy heartbeat, while her other hand continued working pressure points on the girl's neck. 1, 2, 3, she counted under her breath, her movements precise and deliberate. Catalina's body jerked violently. "She's making it worse!" someone shouted. Maria didn't stop. She'd seen this before, the body fighting back before surrendering to healing. She pressed harder, her circles becoming more insistent. 4, 5, 6. The monitors were still screaming. Catalina's face remained blue. Victor's finger tightened on the trigger. "Your time's up. 7, 8, 9. Maria's voice remained calm even as sweat beaded on her forehead. Then, between one heartbeat and the next, something shifted. Catalina's body went completely still. The room held its collective breath. For 3 eternal seconds, nothing happened. The monitors showed flat lines. Maria kept rubbing, kept pressing, and then Catalina gasped. Not the desperate gasp of someone drowning, but the deep breath of someone waking from a nightmare. The blue tint began fading from Catalina's lips, replaced by the faintest hint of pink. The monitor started beeping in normal rhythm. "Oh my God," a nurse whispered. Maria sagged with relief, her hand still on Catalina's chest, feeling her heartbeat stabilize beneath her palm. Dr. Howard stumbled forward, checking the monitors with wide, disbelieving eyes. "Her vitals they're stabilizing. Oxygen levels rising, heart rate normalizing. This shouldn't be possible." But it was. Catalina's eyes fluttered open, confused but alive. She looked up at Maria with the bewildered gaze of a child waking in a strange place. "It's okay, sweetheart," Maria whispered. "You're okay now. Just breathe." The girl's small hand reached up and gripped Maria's wrist weakly, as if she were the only solid thing in her tilting world. Victor lowered his gun slowly, his face unreadable. He stared at his daughter, breathing, conscious, alive, and then at the stranger who had just accomplished the impossible. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. "Everyone out. The doctors scrambled for the door, nearly tripping over each other. Nurses grabbed equipment and fled. Teresa hesitated only a moment before backing out. Within seconds, the bedroom was empty except for 3 people: Victor, Maria, and the child she'd just saved. Maria started to rise, her legs shaky from adrenaline. "I should go finish my cleaning duties. The second-floor hallway needs—" "Sit down." Victor's voice stopped her cold. He moved around the bed like a predator circling prey, his footsteps silent on the thick carpet. He crouched beside Maria, bringing his face level with hers. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the fear he'd been hiding, the dangerous edge of a man who just watched his world nearly end. "Tell me who you are," Victor said, each word carefully measured. "Tell me how you just did what 500 specialists couldn't do. And tell me the truth, because I'll know if you're lying." Maria met his gaze steadily, even though her heart was hammering. "My name is Maria Diaz. I'm your new maid. That's all I am." "Nobody is just anything," Victor said. "Try again." "I learned that technique from my grandmother," Maria continued. "She was a curandera in our village in Honduras, where doctors were a day's journey away. She taught me before she died." Victor studied her face for a long moment, searching for deception. "You expect me to believe a cleaning woman just happened to save my daughter's life with village medicine?" "I don't expect you to believe anything," Maria replied quietly. "I just expect you to let me finish my shift. Your daughter needs rest, and I have 3 more floors to clean." Victor almost laughed. Almost. This woman had walked into his home, saved his dying heir, and now wanted to continue mopping floors like nothing had happened. "You're not going anywhere," he said, and Maria realized her real problems were just beginning. Maria's fingers were still trembling when Victor pulled a chair directly in front of her. He sat down slowly, deliberately, his eyes never leaving her face. "Let's start simple. Where are you from?" "Tegucigalpa originally. Moved here 6 years ago after my husband died." Maria forced herself to hold his gaze. "Family?" Victor asked. "A son, Carlos. He's 19. Scholarship student at City College. He's studying to become a doctor, ironically enough." Victor tilted his head. "So you're telling me a widowed maid from Honduras just happens to know healing techniques that stumped the best surgical minds in the world? It's not magic. It's just forgotten knowledge." Maria wiped her palms on her uniform. "In rural areas, people had to help themselves. My grandmother learned from her mother, who learned from hers. It was survival, not witchcraft. Convenient story." "It's the truth." Maria's voice hardened slightly. "I understand you live in a world where everyone has an angle. Everyone wants something. But I literally ran into this room because I heard a child screaming. That's it." Victor leaned back, studying her. In his line of work, he'd learned to read people. Liars had tells, shifting eyes, nervous tics, stories that were too perfect. This woman was terrified, yes, but her fear felt genuine, raw. Behind him, Catalina stirred, making a small sound. Maria's attention immediately shifted to the girl, her whole body angling toward her protectively. That maternal instinct was harder to fake. "Can I check on her?" Maria asked. Victor nodded once. Maria moved to Catalina's bedside, her movements gentle as she checked her forehead for fever. The girl's eyes were closed now, her breathing steady but shallow. Maria pulled back her upper eyelids carefully, then tilted her head to examine her tongue, her brow furrowed. "What?" Victor was beside her in an instant. "Her tongue," Maria said quietly. "See that discoloration? The slight yellowish tint with those tiny white spots?" Victor looked. He'd seen his daughter examined by hundreds of doctors, but none had mentioned anything about her tongue. "What does it mean?" Maria bit her lip, thinking. "When my cousin got sick, his tongue looked just like this. My grandmother said it meant something toxic was in his system. Not an illness. A poison." The word hung in the air like a knife. "Poison?" Victor repeated, his voice flat. "I could be wrong," Maria added quickly. "But the symptoms, the way she seizes, the way her body rejects every treatment, it doesn't feel like a disease. It feels like her body is fighting something that keeps getting reintroduced." Victor's jaw clenched so hard Maria heard his teeth grind. "Keep talking. You said the doctors have been treating her for 5 weeks. Has there been any pattern to when the seizures happen?" "They're random. Morning, night, afternoon." Victor stopped, his eyes narrowing. "Wait. They always happen within an hour after meals. Every single time." Maria's stomach dropped. "That's not random." She watched Victor's expression change, saw the moment understanding crashed over him like a tidal wave. Someone was poisoning his daughter, Someone in his house. Someone with access to Catalina's meals. Who prepares her food? Maria asked softly. The kitchen staff. Head chef Paolo. 2 assistants. But every meal is supervised and tested. Victor's hands curled into fists. Alejandro oversees all household operations. He personally approves everyone who comes near Catalina. Victor stopped mid-sentence. Maria saw something terrifying flash across his face. Not just anger, but a betrayal so profound it physically hurt. Alejandro, Victor whispered. He's my cousin, my right hand. We grew up together. He's Catalina's godfather. I'm sorry, Maria said, and she meant it. She knew what betrayal felt like. Her husband had died owing money to loan sharks, leaving her to pay his debts while raising their son. But that was finances. This was a child's life. Victor stood abruptly, pulling out his phone. His thumb hovered over the screen, then he stopped. If I'm right, and Alejandro discovers I know, Catalina becomes a liability. He'll finish the job before I can act. He turned to Maria. You're sure about this? No, Maria admitted. I'm a maid who learned folk medicine from her grandmother, but those surgeons couldn't figure it out in 5 weeks. Sometimes the simplest answer is the right one. Victor looked at his daughter, small, fragile, innocent, and something murderous settled in his eyes. If someone in my household is trying to kill my heir, they're declaring war on me, and I don't lose wars. He turned back to Maria, and she saw the full weight of who he really was. Not a desperate father, but a crime lord. You're staying here. You keep Catalina alive and you help me find proof. Do that, and I'll make sure you and your son are protected for life. And if I refuse? Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. You're a smart woman, Maria. You know there's no refusing. You walked into my world the moment you walked through that door. The only question now is whether you survive it. Maria thought of Carlos waiting in their tiny apartment, studying for his biology exam. Carlos, who needed his mother to come home. I'll need to call my son. Tell him I'll be working late. Of course, Victor said. Right after you help me catch a traitor. The guest room Victor assigned to Maria was bigger than her entire apartment. Silk curtains framed floor-to-ceiling windows. A king-sized bed dominated the center, looking untouched and impossibly expensive. Maria ignored all of it, standing by the window with her phone pressed to her ear. Mama, when are you coming home? Carlos's voice was concerned. I got held up at work, mijo. Mr. Alvarez next door will check on you tonight. There's leftover rice and beans in the fridge. But you promised to help me with my anatomy flashcards tonight. Maria's throat tightened. I know I did. And we will. I promise. Just not tonight. Tomorrow. I'll make it up to you. Okay, Carlos said, but Maria could hear the disappointment. After hanging up, she stood staring at her phone. What was she doing? She should walk out that door and never look back. 3 days of careful observation later, Maria found herself helping prepare for a celebration dinner. We're having a special meal tonight, Victor had announced at breakfast. Catalina sitting beside him nibbling toast. For my daughter's recovery, family and inner circle only. Alejandro had looked up sharply from his tablet. Is that wise? Catalina is still weak. She's strong enough, Victor said, ruffling his daughter's hair. And it's time to show everyone that the Ferreira family doesn't break. We survive. He looked at Maria. You'll join us. Maria's mind raced. A family dinner. Everyone gathered. Alejandro would be there along with Victor's most trusted men. I'd be honored, Maria said. Alejandro's eyes narrowed slightly, watching her with growing suspicion. That afternoon, Maria asked the head chef if she could create a special toast for the celebration, a traditional drink her grandmother made for important occasions. She worked carefully preparing individual glasses, most containing simple ingredients: honey, herbs, lemon, harmless and pleasant. But for Alejandro's glass, she added something different: crushed tablets from the medicine cabinet that would cause temporary symptoms: rapid heartbeat, sweating, muscle spasms. Nothing dangerous, but enough to mimic what Catalina had endured, along with a trace amount of the substance she'd found hidden in his private office. It was a gamble, a terrifying gamble. If she was wrong about Alejandro, she just poisoned an innocent man. If she was right but the plan failed, he would know she was onto him. Either way, tonight would end badly for someone. Maria had also spent the day watching Catalina, noting how the girl flinched whenever Alejandro entered the room. Children sense danger in ways adults often missed, their instincts unclouded by social niceties or complicated histories. Catalina knew something wasn't right. A memory surfaced of Maria's grandmother saying, "Poison doesn't just harm the body, It leaves traces everywhere, in belongings, in habits, in the eyes of the poisoner who can never look directly at their victim. She'd searched Alejandro's quarters while he was out, finding a locked box behind his bookshelf. The discovery chilled her blood. A small vial of colorless liquid and medical journals with passages highlighted about undetectable toxins. Most damning was a handwritten note detailing dosage increases over time to mimic progressive illness, with Catalina's meal schedule marked in red. Victor had almost caught her leaving Alejandro's room, forcing her to hide in a linen closet for 40 excruciating minutes. One wrong move, one misplaced item, and her plan would collapse. Either Victor would discover her snooping, or Alejandro would realize someone had been through his things. She'd carefully photographed everything before replacing it exactly as found, noticing something else. Correspondence with a doctor in Switzerland, not among those treating Catalina. The letter mentioned succession plans, and after the girl, with a timeline that made Maria's hands shake with rage and determination. The dining room glittered with luxury. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over a table set with gold-rimmed china. 14 men in expensive suits took their seats. Victor at the head, Catalina beside him, and Alejandro directly across from Victor in the position of honor. Maria was seated further down, between two lieutenants who eyed her with curiosity and suspicion. "Gentlemen," Victor raised his wine glass. "5 weeks ago I thought I'd lost everything. My daughter was dying, and the best surgeons in the world couldn't save her. Then this woman walked into my home and did what seemed impossible." Murmurs rippled around the table. Some men nodded respectfully at Maria. Others looked skeptical. "To Catalina's health," Victor continued, "and to second chances." Everyone raised their glasses and drank. Maria caught the chef's eye and gave a small nod. He stepped forward with a tray of small, ornate glasses, each containing Maria's special drink. "A traditional blessing," he announced, "prepared by Ms. Diaz in honor of Miss Catalina's recovery." The glasses were distributed. Maria watched carefully as Alejandro received his, slightly darker in color, imperceptible unless you knew to look for it. Alejandro raised an eyebrow at her. "My grandmother said it brings protection and reveals truth," Maria explained, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Something flickered in Alejandro's eyes. Suspicion. Fear. But he couldn't refuse without drawing attention. Victor stood again. "To family, to loyalty, to the blood we share. To family," the men echoed. Everyone drank. Maria counted in her head. 3 to 5 minutes before the symptoms would appear. Conversation flowed around the table. Business was discussed. Catalina laughed at something one of the men said. Then Alejandro's hand trembled. He set down his glass quickly, but Maria had seen it. So had the man beside him. "You all right, Alejandro?" the lieutenant asked. "Fine," he said, but his voice was strained. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Seconds later, his face went pale. "Alejandro," Victor leaned forward, concern creasing his face. Alejandro gasped, his hand going to his chest. "I don't feel—" His body jerked violently, exactly like Catalina's had done. The glass fell from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. He collapsed, convulsions racking his body. The dining room erupted in chaos. Men jumped to their feet. Someone shouted for help. Victor was around the table in seconds, kneeling beside his cousin. "Alejandro, what's happening?" His voice was raw with panic. The security cameras that normally recorded every inch of the estate had mysteriously malfunctioned in Catalina's wing during her worst episodes, a detail Maria had discovered while reviewing footage with the head of security under the pretense of learning house protocols for her new position as Catalina's caretaker. Alejandro's phone buzzed on the table as he convulsed, a message preview visible to everyone. "Transfer complete. Ready when you are." The timing couldn't have been more damning. The final piece in a puzzle of betrayal that had been building for months beneath the surface of family loyalty. Behind them, Catalina whispered something that silenced the room. "He made me drink special medicine when you weren't looking, Daddy. Said it would be our secret." Her small voice carried a weight that crushed any remaining doubt, the innocent testimony more powerful than any evidence. One of Victor's lieutenants slid a phone across the table, financial records showing millions diverted from family accounts to offshore holdings in Alejandro's name. Time to complete transfers just as Catalina's condition was expected to become terminal. The plan had been meticulous, calculated down to the inheritance laws. Maria recognized the look that crossed Victor's face. She'd seen it once before when she witnessed a cornered predator in her village, the moment when fear transforms to deadly resolve. The men around the table sensed it too, stepping back as if from a blast radius. understanding that justice in this world happened swiftly and without mercy. Maria stood slowly, her legs steady now. This was the moment of truth. "That's what Catalina endured every day for 5 weeks," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "The same symptoms, the same suffering that nearly killed her." The room went silent. All eyes turned to Maria. "What are you saying?" one of the lieutenants demanded. Maria walked to where Alejandro lay gasping on the floor. She knelt down and carefully pulled back his upper lip, examining his tongue. "Look at his tongue," she said. "See that yellowish discoloration with white spots? That's not from my drink. That's from the same poison that was killing Catalina. The poison only one person had exclusive access to administer." Victor stared at Alejandro's tongue, then at Maria. Understanding crashed over his face. "You've been slipping something into her food," Victor whispered. "All this time, while I trusted you with her life." Alejandro's eyes went wide. He tried to speak, but his body was still seizing. Maria pulled out her phone and showed Victor the photos from Alejandro's locked drawer, the vial of clear liquid hidden behind false books, the same substance she'd detected in Catalina's favorite juice. "You set me up," Alejandro gasped between convulsions. "With a harmless substance that mimics symptoms," Maria interrupted. "You'll be fine in 20 minutes. Unlike Catalina, who suffered for 5 weeks while you slowly murdered her." "Why?" Victor's voice was barely audible. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Alejandro lay on the floor, his seizures beginning to subside, but his eyes were wild with the desperation of a man who knew his life was over. "You were going soft," Alejandro finally snarled, his voice gaining strength even as his body trembled. "Legitimate businesses, peace with rival families, retiring from the streets. Your father built this empire through fear. And you were dismantling everything because of some little girl." Victor's expression hardened to stone. He reached inside his jacket and removed his pistol, pressing it against Alejandro's temple. "You are no longer family," he said quietly. The gunshot echoed through the mansion, and Maria closed Catalina's eyes before she could see what happened next. Thank you all for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video. Your support means everything, and helps me continue creating these stories for you.